Yeah, that's. We'll move on to indies. Indies have had a big year, and some of those have included the rise of new advertising venues. And Mitu might be the person to start because your game is on Steam and GOG. So how is that? One is DRM and the other isn't DRM. How is that? Was there any decision to do that, or were they the ones that?
Well, I mean, in terms of, obviously, it's the old adage of you have to be on Steam, right? And definitely in terms of sales percentage, Steam has been the biggest share of sales, it's probably becoming less true, just as a general point, that just because your game is on Steam, it will do super well. I'm fortunate that Redshirt has been doing very well, I think in terms of platform decisions, a lot of that was kind of the remit of Positech Games, who actually published Redshirt. And that was like a really interesting partnership because it was the first time that they've published a game. So basically they're a one-person developer, where Positech Games, they're responsible for research space battles, etc. They basically decided to publish Redshirt, and that basically means they took care of things like marketing and speaking to platforms and basically doing all the things that meant that I could just get on with development for the most part, which is really nice. Because Redshirt was my first indie game, and I think as a new developer, it was really I like to think of it as wearing sort of indie training wheels almost, because I provided the sort of stability to be able to just made it like a smooth ride. So that was really nice, and because obviously they've been massively successful. Obviously, they as one person in Paris has been massively successful doing what it does. So it was really about just sort of learning from the knowledge and wisdom of someone who's been there and done it. And I think that's really important. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I boot up Steam these days, and it's like the App Store. There's so many indie games coming through that I don't even have the time to play, and it feels like that's happening. That's kind of a question.
Yeah. No, it's true, and I think this is kind of the sort of reflective of the grumblings that have been going around, right? About Greenlight and there we go, I said that word. And I was very fortunate that I didn't have to go through Greenlight, just as a side point, because I do wonder if Redshirt would have made it on Steam if I had done, because it is such a different kind of concept. I don't think Greenlight. I'm not sure Greenlight is the answer really, because the community doesn't really know what it's doing most of the time. It's absolutely true. It's not being on Steam is no longer the sort of the answer. It's not the guarantee of success that it perhaps used to be.
I was just going to add, I think the biggest problem with Steam, and this goes to what you said, is that recently Steam Greenlight changed from the usual number of games that we're getting through on a whatever time frame basis. There were a couple of batches where up to 100 Greenlight games were getting greenlit at once. And it's this problem of, I can understand why they want to do it. It's opening the floodgates a bit wider so that more people can get their own games on Steam. Because getting your game on Steam was seen as a guarantee of increased sales. But the problem is that much like the App Store, the more games you've got on there at any one time, and the more games you've got flooding that market at a time, the less special it is to get your game on Steam. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with Steam Greenlight at the moment, is it is taking away that special, yes, my game made it on Steam, it's now got space on the Steam storefront. Now it's just sort of, it's less of a guarantee of increased sales and more of a necessity to just, you've got to do it because that's why people buy games. It's just really weird. Steam Greenlight is a really weird process at the best of times. There is some really, there is stuff, I go through and I write an article about Steam Greenlight submissions, and a lot of it, you're looking through it, it looks like this the App Store where there are so many games that are, the fake Mario clones that have got real Mario art in them, and like super modern Warfighter 3 that's got stolen Call of Duty assets, and it's so much of this stuff that looks like it's the sort of thing you would see on the App Store. And while they're not letting it all on straight away, I feel like they're letting too much on at a time, and it is taking away that special something that getting on Steam used to give. And I just worry for developers going forward that getting on Steam won't be enough anymore, and that there'll be something else you need to do to get that point that you used to get with Steam.
I remember the question.
There wasn't really.
It was a question of indie games.
Well, my first game was on the App Store, which is difficult. We got featured, so we got a lot of downloads in the first week. I think getting featured on the App Store is, if you don't get featured, you don't have much hope, basically. Like loads of money. But out of all of my kind of indie developer friends, none of them have managed to get on Steam.
How come you didn't have to go through Greenlight? Just because you had a publisher?
Yeah, because I had a publisher who has their games on Steam already, so I think that was another aspect in which the partnership with Positech so that was another aspect in which the partnership with Positech was just, it was really beneficial, obviously, to getting Rancher out there.
I just thought again, just because these guys are developers, you're journalists as well, but developers mainly, and I kind of, from my angle, talking about games, I always get invited to talk on the mainstream stuff about Grand Theft Auto. Like, it's just I'm going on BBC tomorrow to talk about Grand Theft Auto for like the 100th time this year. It was actually still 2 months, so it's 3 months, maybe? Too long. But yeah, from a journalist perspective, like the stuff that gets me really excited is it's not Call of Duty, it's not Need for Speed. Although I'll play those games, it's the indie stuff, it's the Gone Home and the Stanley Parables. And I feel a bit like, like when you read a film critic review in The Guardian, they'll say, don't go and see Iron Man 3, they'll go watch this obscure French film, the subtitles about some lesbian relationship. You're like, no, I want to see Iron Man, I want to see shit blow up and have a good time. But whenever I go and talk on the mainstream stuff, I say, I use my best pseudo-intellectual voice, and I explain to people that the indie game scene now is like cinema in the 70s, where you had film schools cropping up, and you had easier and cheaper access to filmmaking equipment, so you had the likes of George Lucas and Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola coming through and making deeply personal projects that they really cared about, they were commercial, and that's what's happening in games at the moment. So I try and kind of get that message across as much as possible, and genuinely the stuff that you guys are making is really interesting stuff. That, like, as a journalist, you've got to review the core duties, and Grand Theft Auto is a very it's got a great artistic singular vision. But the games that are really interesting are at the other end, and I'd much rather play a Journey or a Red Shirt than a Call of Duty on a personal.